The MMA world is spinning out of control, and we are breaking down the biggest stories starting right now. First up is the absolute chaos surrounding UFC Freedom 250, where the controversial Josh Hokit is set to clash with the legendary knockout artist Derrick Lewis. Hokit has gone from a fringe prospect to a polarizing heavyweight headliner faster than anyone saw coming, and with UFC President Dana White giving the nod to this high-stakes showdown. Fans are split right down the middle on whether this is a masterclass in promotion or pure madness.
Tired of dropping your phone or struggling to prop it up? Meet the Pop Sockets phone grip with expanding kickstand in black, your new must-have accessory. Don't miss out. Grab yours today. Click the link in the video description to shop now on Amazon.
Next, we are taking a walk down memory lane to revisit one of the most bizarre chapters in combat sports history. We are talking about the decade-old mystery that was UFC 197, where John Jones and Ovince St. Preux ended up headlining an interim title fight that literally no one predicted would happen. It was a chaotic mess of last-minute roster shifts and judicial rulings that somehow resulted in a main event fight card that turned into a historic night in Las Vegas. Shifting gears to the state of the promotion itself, former UFC fighter Darren Till is not holding back on his blunt assessment of the current landscape. Till has publicly accused UFC President Dana White of losing his focus and dismissed the quality of recent events while calling out a lack of transparency during media scrums. Now competing in the bare-knuckle fighting championship, Till claims he is completely tuned out of the UFC product and is setting his sights on his upcoming debut against Aaron Chalmers. Finally, we have Joe Rogan throwing his weight behind a major shakeup for the light heavyweight division. With newly crowned champion Carlos Ulberg facing a long road to recovery after knee surgery, Rogan is actively campaigning for an interim title fight to keep the momentum going. He is betting big on the surging Paulo Costa as the primary contender to lead that charge. If you want to stay on top of all these developing stories, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. 8 months ago, if you mentioned the name Josh Hokit, most UFC fans would have just rolled their eyes. He was that guy showing up, being loud, acting like a caricature of a professional wrestler, and honestly, it was cringy. But fast forward to today, and the conversation has shifted from, who is this guy, to, is he the heavyweight savior this division desperately needs? It's a bizarre rise to stardom. Hokit, a former college football player and wrestler, went from an attention-starved Contender Series winner to a legitimate contender in less than a year. His gimmick, a weird, stream-of-consciousness, pro-wrestling-style performance that left even Dana White scratching his head. White has dealt with guys like Sean Strickland, but even he's been vocal about his dislike for Hokit's shtick. Yet, you can't argue with the results. Everything changed at UFC 327. We expected a tactical wrestling match against Curtis Blades, but instead, we got an absolute bloodbath. They traded 354 strikes in a Fight of the Year contender that turned skeptics into believers. Dana White, usually the first to bash a fighter's personality, had to eat his words. He walked the talk. Now, Hokit is heading to UFC Freedom 250 to take on the knockout king himself, Derrick Lewis, a fight rumored to be backed by none other than Donald Trump. It's an interesting spot for the heavyweight division, which is currently in total chaos. With John Jones retired, Tom Aspinall sidelined, and Cyril Gain struggling to find his footing, the UFC is starving for a fresh, marketable face. Is Hokit actually elite, or is he just the right personality at the right time in a dying division? That's the million-dollar question. Whether you love the act or think it's all hot air, one thing is for sure. You won't be able to look away when he steps into the cage at Freedom 250. What do you think? Is Hokit a future champion or just a flash in the pan? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest breakdowns on the biggest fights in the game. Ever wondered how a disaster of an event somehow becomes a piece of MMA history? 10 years ago, the fight game took a wild turn with UFC 197, a card defined by absolute chaos and a main event that felt like a fever dream. Back in April 2016, the UFC was struggling to find its footing after a legal battle stalled their debut in Madison Square Garden. With the Vegas-based MGM Grand Garden Arena stepping in as a last-minute savior, you would think the problems ended there, but the roster was in total disarray. We were promised the ultimate grudge match, Daniel Cormier versus John Jones for the light heavyweight crown. But between Jones, legal run-ins, and a last-minute injury forcing Cormier to withdraw, the original plan fell apart in spectacular fashion. With Anthony Johnson unavailable, the promotion turned to Ovens St. Priya. To put that in perspective, OSP stepped into an interim title fight coming off just a single win. It was a bizarre matchmaking scramble that defied logic. The fight itself, it was essentially a masterclass in ring rust. Jones dominated with a methodical, one-sided performance, cruising to a shutout victory. While the main event left fans scratching their heads, the night was ultimately saved by the co-main event, where Demetrius Johnson reminded us of his brilliance by starching Henry Cejudo in the very first round. UFC 197 is a perfect reminder that in this sport, the most unpredictable moments often happen before the cage door even closes. If you love digging into these forgotten chapters of fight history, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Which scramble matchup do you think was the weirdest in UFC history? Sometimes, the most forgettable fights are the ones that tell the most interesting stories. Ever wonder if the guy running the show has actually stopped watching his own product? That is exactly the bombshell Darren Till dropped recently, and frankly, it is sending shockwaves through the MMA community. Speaking candidly on the Ariel Helwani show, the former UFC star didn't hold back, claiming that Dana White seems completely checked out of the current state of the promotion. It is a bold accusation, especially coming from a fighter who lived and breathed the UFC ecosystem for years. Till pointed to the noticeable dip in the quality of recent events, but he went deeper than just the fight cards. He called out the UFC boss for his dismissive attitude during press scrums, particularly when the conversation shifts to sensitive topics like the use of AI in promotional content. It is fascinating to hear a former insider suggest that the media themselves have become hesitant, almost afraid to press the big questions that fans actually care about. Seeing a powerhouse like Till pivot, moving from his UFC exit in 2022 to finding new life in Misfits Boxing, and now signing with the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship for his May 30th debut against Aaron Chalmers, shows he is not just a critic. He is a man reinventing his own path. What do you think? Is Till onto something regarding the UFC's leadership focus, or is this just sour grapes from a fighter who has moved on? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the world of combat sports. At the end of the day, when the face of the sport stops caring about the product, eventually, the fans will start looking for the exit too. Is the UFC light heavyweight division about to grind to a halt? That is the big question following Carlos Ulberg's shocking ACL injury right after his massive win over Jiri Prochazka at UFC 327. We just crowned a new champion, and now he is already sidelined for surgery. It is a tough break for Black Jag, but for the rest of the division, it creates a massive vacuum that needs filling immediately. Joe Rogan isn't wasting any time waiting around. On his latest podcast, he made his stance clear. The UFC needs to keep the momentum going by introducing an interim title. And honestly, it makes perfect sense. The standout performer of that same card was undoubtedly Paulo Costa. He moved up to light heavyweight and absolutely dismantled Azamat Murzakanov, looking the best he has ever looked in the octagon. Rogan even went as far as to tell Costa to hang up the middleweight gloves for good. But here is where it gets interesting. If Rogan were running the show, he would put the interim belt on the line right now with Costa as a top contender, possibly against someone like Magomed Ankalaev. While Dana White is keeping his cards close to his chest, the pressure is mounting to keep the 205-pound division moving. Do you think an interim title is the right move to save the division, or should we just wait for Ulberg to heal up? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more fight updates. Because in this sport, the only thing that moves faster than the fighters is the chaos that follows them.